All right, let's talk about alfalfa versus grass for grass-fed steers. So if you are just getting into grass-fed beef, or you're looking to raise it, or maybe you've been in it for a while and you want to do something different, you might be wondering what's the difference between the hays, right? What's the difference here? So I have got a couple different types of hay right here, and I'm going to go through them all and show them to you. The first one being junk grass. Okay, so this is grass hay. Actually, this is more weeds than it is grass, but it was stuff that we made for our horse neighbors, and obviously horses are a lot pickier than cows are, or steers, so they didn't want it, so we took it. Looking at this stuff, it looks like just a regular bale of hay, right? But if we dive deeper, we can see there's grass in here, right? But there is stuff in here like this. This is called plantain, or at least that's what I call it. It is a kind of fuzzy like weed, and it doesn't dry down. I mean, you can see kind of the fuzziness of it, but you can also see that how it shriveled up and turned black. That's because when I baled it, it was full of moisture. It's a very common weed that grows in farmland, and those hay fields that we made this hay off of, it's awful. It's junk ground, it's junk grass hay. It's not really worth much, but the steers, for some reason, eat it like candy. I don't know why, but they love it. So this, you could find this at, I mean, this is just super cheap stuff that you could buy at an auction. I mean, this stuff might be worth like $2-3 a bale. It's hardly worth anything. You can get it super cheap, and you could probably find big bales or round bales, however you like to feed it. Now, we like to have a little bit of diversity in their diet. There's not much protein or sugar or really anything in this hay. And when you're feeding just grass hay, there's no grain or any type of feed that we're adding to it. So they kind of need something that's going to give them a little bit more oomph, right? So that's why right here, this is good grass hay. All right, so we made this off of a different neighbor's field that we do some custom work for. This is pasture grass. This isn't like orchard grass or anything. This is pasture grass or meadow grass. A lot less weeds. There's some horse nettle in here, but other than that, it's a lot of just young, healthy grass. It's good stuff. Now, this stuff actually did get rained on once. So when we baled it, I was scrambling to get it dry. So there were some spots that were a little wet. Like you can kind of hear it, a little bit hard. Other than that, this stuff is really, really nice. So this grass is a lot nicer grass, green, smells good, and this stuff has a lot more feed quality just because there's 75% more grass in here than there is in those bales. Even though the steers seem to love this stuff has a little bit better feed quality. This grass, if you went to an auction, you could probably pick it up for $200 a ton, 250, I don't know. Like I said, it did get rained on once, so it kind of lost a little bit. Other than that, it's good hay that you can still probably find at a pretty affordable price. As you can see, they're munching up on some delicious stuff right here, which I will show you. This is fifth cutting alfalfa right here, and just look at the leaves in that. Now, alfalfa is like a staple in a bovine diet, sort of. It doesn't have to be, but if you think of dairy farms, a lot of them are chopping alfalfa, or at least they used to chop alfalfa for feed. Nowadays, some of those guys are getting away from alfalfa, but cows love alfalfa. They love it, love it, love it. Now, this particular alfalfa that they're munching on was fifth cutting off of our fields. It started as a grass alfalfa mix, but then the grass kind of died off, and it's mainly alfalfa, but they love it. I mean, just look at them munching their faces in there. Now, here's the thing with this alfalfa. This alfalfa, I baled late September, and alfalfa is pretty hard to dry if you didn't know. So if you're not a farmer and you're just a buyer, know that alfalfa is really difficult to make, and it's difficult to make really, really good. If you're really, really picky about alfalfa, you have to understand that it can be difficult to make good alfalfa. It's very dependent on weather and kind of the windows that you get. When alfalfa might not be what you want it to be, understand that it's a very difficult thing to make. So this alfalfa I made late September, and I baled it, let it dry for like 3 days. It didn't quite dry down the way I wanted it to, just because days are shorter, a little cooler temperatures, and dew was setting on it, so it didn't dry down how I wanted exactly. Most of it turned out really good. There were some wet spots down by a tree line that were still a little bit wet, and they kind of molded and musted, but with steers, it does not matter. They don't get colic or anything. They're not affected by mold or must or really any of that. So this alfalfa, I only made 70 bales of it because it was a fifth cutting, but it still turned out to be really, really good steer feed. And because it was a little bit on the wetter side, the leaf retention was still actually pretty good. Like right here, you could see, well, maybe the camera doesn't show it, but I mean, you could see all the leaves in there while I'm trying to show you right there. You can really see all the leaves in there. So there's some spots that there was some leaf shatter, but a lot of it has really good leaf retention. And that's where the good stuff is, the leaves of that alfalfa. If you can manage to make really good hay or find alfalfa with the leaves on it for a good price, that's the nail on the head right there. We make horse hay. Like, I mean, as you've seen, we make horse hay. And so we made some of that. The first 4 cuttings was actually really good stuff that we sell to horse people. And we made some other mix hay that was really good as well. But this stuff was just a little bit on the wetter side, so we're just going to feed it to steers. And it turned out to be really good. You could see, I mean, it's a green bale. I mean, if the light would be right, but it's a pretty green bale. Even the stems are green. It was some good stuff. Look at the leaves there. Like, that's what you want to see in alfalfa. So if you are grass feeding steers, cattle, right? And you go to an auction or you have a buyer, sometimes that alfalfa, kind of that wetter alfalfa that maybe has a little mold or a little bit of must in it, that stuff you can get for pretty cheap, just because that mold and that must will really decrease the value of the hay. But it's still really good steer hay, because the steers, they're going to nose through it. They'll probably eat it eventually, but they'll pick around it. They don't care. They're going to eat almost that entire bale, maybe even all of it, probably all of it. They're going to eat it. So if you can find that stuff that is maybe has a little bit of mold, a little bit of must, or maybe it was just baled a little bit wetter and the farmer is selling it for a cheaper price just because it was baled a little bit wetter, and it might be good. It's probably good. For his sake, he's like, I'm going to sell it cheaper just because it was wetter. That's some good stuff. That's the good stuff. So if you can find that, you might be in pretty good shape, because alfalfa's got a lot of them sugars in it. I mean, you could just see, he knows what the good stuff is. They all know the good stuff. So thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like. If you learned something, follow along, subscribe. And if you have any questions about hay or raising steers, leave a comment down below. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.